So, Christopher Bollyn, this is the first time you're here in Aarhus to have a lecture, and you're going to have a lecture tonight about Scandinavia's role in the war on terror. Could you, if you should take out the most important thing that you're going to tell the audience about tonight, what would that be?
Well, the most important thing is for people to understand that the war on terror is a deception.
Okay.
It's not what we have been told it is.
Okay.
And that should be a liberating experience.
And how do you think it started, this deception? How could it create it?
Well, it was, most people think that September 11th brought us the war on terror.
Okay.
When in fact, the historical record shows that the war on terror is much older. And the war on terror doctrine was created and put into play in the late 1970s in Israel, under the regime of Menachem Begin and the Netanyahus. And 9/11 simply made the war on terror operational. And so that,
so like an excuse to...
It was the spark plug. It was the thing that made it, that took it from the drawing board into reality.
Okay. That's scary to think about.
Well, it's not so scary. It's scarier actually to be ignorant of the true history of the war on terror. It's scarier to think that the Muslim world wants to conquer us and wants to kill us because we're Christians or because we're Europeans. This is rubbish. This is it's a liberating experience to understand the truth about the war on terror, and that there is no great clash of civilizations. That what is happening is like a bad movie around us. The terrorism is mostly fabricated, and what happens is that things like 9/11 come along, and it created this shock and awe in the world, and allowed them to then foist this illegal war on terror on the entire Western world.
We spoke earlier when we were sitting here having a little bit to eat, we spoke about the refugees coming to Scandinavia as well. Do you think that's as well as organized? Or?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's part of the same program. Anybody knows that when you're going to go and create a war and devastation in a country, you're going to create refugee flow.
Exactly.
And you know, in Sweden and Scandinavia, you get a lot of kids from Afghanistan and Syria, and I mean kids. In Sweden, there's a lot of tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors from Syria and Afghanistan. Tens of thousands who are, you know, living now in Sweden on a temporary basis. But this this program was organized. This is very similar actually to what happened in the Soviet Union during the Soviet time. Part of the Soviet program was to bring people from Asian provinces into European republics, and to basically weaken the national fabric of a society by bringing in Soviet people. It's the same thing they're doing now. They're creating tension, and they're trying to weaken the national fabric of European societies.
Here in Denmark, I heard some people compare the Jewish people from the Second World War and the Muslim people, the refugees that's Muslim today. What do you think about that comparison? Well,
it's similar in the sense that in the Second World War there were refugee flows of Jewish people and other people. It wasn't just the Jews. For example, in Dresden, it was a sanctuary city full of refugees from Eastern Europe when the Allies, when the Americans and the British bombed it and killed a lot of people, many of whom were refugees. But what we're seeing today in Europe is we're seeing refugee flows which have not been seen before in Europe since World War II.
Okay. Another question, the Danish Prime Minister, Poul Nyrup Rasmussen, there's a so-called famous, actually it is famous, video going on YouTube where he knew somebody was calling him and telling him like 10-15 minutes before that the tower was going to fall. What do you think about that the Danish Prime Minister knows about that?
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. I've seen that video where he says that in 5 minutes before the towers fell, he got a call and said that the towers would fall. He said 5 to 10 minutes, and the important thing to question is to ask who made this call to him, who called him up, and what was his connection to this person that called him. You know, who gave him this sort of inside information, and why would they do that? Those are questions that he would have to answer.
A lot of people would like to know that answer. You don't have a intuition or...
No, I would just say, I would just think that the Danish Prime Minister since 2001 and following prime ministers have been very, very gung-ho on the war on terror. Exactly. They were first in line to join in Afghanistan and I think in Iraq as well. Danish bombers bombed Tripoli in the final days of that illegal war. And what I think has been done is that the Scandinavian nations have been dragged into this conflict and these wars, all of which are illegal, in order to give a veneer of legality, to make it look like, because the Western world and the world looks at Scandinavia as being kind of the most progressive and morally correct nations in the world. Exactly. They've had this prestige for a long time. So you've also seen, though, since the days of the balkanization of Yugoslavia, you've seen the Scandinavians in front roles, in primary roles in Afghanistan, in Yugoslavia, and in Syria and Iraq. And I think it's basically because the Americans and the British want to share the blame, and they want to bring other countries in, especially countries that have a high degree of moral prestige.
So it is very important, this lecture you're going to have tonight, yeah?
Yes, I think it is. It's a specially made program I've done specifically for Denmark, because Denmark has the highest number of casualties actually per capita in Afghanistan, and so this gung-ho waging the war on terror, they've taken the Scandinavian nations in, but the people in Scandinavia themselves don't understand what is this all about. Exactly. They're living in a kind of limbo where they don't understand, you know, what are we doing there? Why are we there? We're not building schools. We're not building roads. We're not creating democracy. We're conquering countries and devastating them. And it's very important for the Scandinavians and the Americans and everybody who's involved to be disabused of the lies and the deception, and to understand the real agenda of the war on terror and who's behind it.
May I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
Before we stop here? I wonder, how can you deal with go on and go on and go? How can you deal with it? I mean, it's a rough, as I see it, it must be a rough way of life to keep on speaking to people. Maybe they want to listen, maybe they don't want to listen, maybe they get angry at you. And
yeah, that's the easiest part.
Okay.
The hardest part is, I think, apathy. Seeing the public, the majority of the public, whether you're in Sweden or Denmark or the United States, people are apathetic. People think that the war on terror is a good thing, so they don't understand why you're critical of it. But people don't understand also the truth about 9/11. It all goes back to September 11th. Because when you understand that September 11th was a fraud, a hoax, a false flag terror atrocity that was designed to be blamed on Muslims, then things start making sense. But in order for the people, for the public to resist the war, they have to understand the deception. That's what I'm trying to do. And it is hard, but it has to be done.
It has to be done, yeah. So we have to leave soon to have the lecture. If you would like to say something freely, what would you like to say to the people who's going to listen to this?
Well, listen with an open mind, and keep your ears open and your minds free of deception you might have been told. And I present only factual information explaining what the war on terror is, where it came from, and where it's taking us. And I can tell you for sure, we know it's no place we want to go. Exactly. We don't want to go there. Exactly. And it has to be stopped. And it will not be stopped. Our politicians won't stop it. No. And our universities won't stop it. Our newspapers won't stop it.
Exactly.
It's incumbent on the public, the average person, to stand up and resist the lies. And until that happens, it will go on. And as I said, it has to stop.
It has to stop.
It has to stop.
Let that be the last
Thank
word.
you.
Thank you very much, Christopher.